Hello everyone, my name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic night. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There's a ton of stuff that is happening throughout the world, and a ton of stuff that is going on, of course, inside the country of Ukraine that has been developing over the last 24 hours. So I hope that everyone is ready to go through all of that. And there's a reason why we do this every single day, why we go through and we do these streams and we're doing the research, and that's because we're trying to make the world a better place, considering all the pretty terrible things that are ongoing in it. That's usually what ends up making the news, and so we want to give a way to give back. We want to be a force for good with this channel, to keep you both informed, but also to let people, but also to give you a way to give back. So please be sure to check out the video description. There are a ton of different donation links that are down there, a ton of which, all of them earn 70% or more that actually go to their programs with the donations that receive, with 30% or less of the donations they receive going to salaries and administration's costs and what have you. So if you can't give a lot to these wonderful organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's totally okay too. Just help us grow our impact here on the channel, giving us that like, subscribe, sharing our stuff with your friends and communities. It really helps us out a ton. And the more people that come here and watch the news and become informed, and also the more people that have opportunities to give back and to help a ton of people. So hopefully we'll be able to do a lot of good. We're looking forward to doing a lot of good here in 2023. So if you are live with us tonight, I am watching the live chat, and I'm going to be more than happy to answer any questions or respond to comments made throughout the duration of the stream here in the comments section. And so please be sure to, if you have a question, a lot of this deals with conflicts, ask a question. I will do my best to answer it. Give you a little background on myself. I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020 as an O-352 anti-tank missileman and a corporal with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I did 2 tours to the Middle East. My first tour between October of 2017 and March of 2018. Spent 4.5 months in the country of Syria and a month and a half in the country of Kuwait during transit, where I supported Special Operations Forces and coalition partners as part of Operation Inherent Resolve, and also the fight against the Islamic State and stabilizing the region there in northeastern Syria. My second tour to the Middle East, between October of 2019 and March of 2020, I was a Javelin team leader with a crisis response company out of Kuwait, where I spent the majority of my time. And then I was one of the 100 Marines that responded to the Baghdad Embassy complex on New Year's of 2020, where I oversaw all anti-armor operations over the Baghdad Embassy complex as a whole, before being rotated out about a month and a half later, and after the situation had died down, and going down to Saudi Arabia and training Saudi Arabian Marines preparing to deploy to Yemen as part of the Saudi coalition fighting the Houthi rebels there. I am a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armored doctrine, but I'm also a fully cross-trained machine gunner, a fully cross-trained rifleman, a partially cross-trained radio operator, as well as a CLS or Combat Lifesaver Certified Marine, meaning I've received additional medical training and have medical experience on top of what most Marines are going to be receiving. So if you have any questions in those subject areas, please feel free to ask them. And of course, I will make inferences on stuff that I may not have been formally talked to, but I do have knowledge in. Outside of that, I do have a lot of interest in other things: geopolitics, human geography, archaeology, history, all of that fun stuff. So I claim to be an expert in none of these things, but it doesn't really matter, because I implore you as the viewer to please do your own research whenever anything comes up. If you find something interesting or you want to know more, we provide our maps. Our daily maps are archived through when we started archiving them in April on our website. The link is also in the description, and anything that has 18 plus next to it we will not show on stream, and as well as anything that we have associated articles with coming from other sources, other different organizations. If we have them added here, so that way you guys can go and read them, and you can have a starting point if you like a starting point to research on your own. So please do that. There is no substitute for researching on your own. There really is not, because nobody has the full picture at all. So please be sure to go and make sure to do some research if you have interest. Outside of that, we can go ahead and immediately jump into the news. And we jump in right down in here into the country of Ukraine, which has been at war with Russia. Well, I truly say for the last 9 years, but for our intents and purposes, since February the 24th of 2022, when Russia declared, didn't officially declare war, they considered it a special military operation, but they invaded the country of Ukraine. So up here coming out of Kyiv, we actually start off with something a little bit nice, thanks to Erevis and some members on our Discord community, which you should totally jump on. We actually found something. So Patron is, Patron's an amazing dog. Patron is a bomb-sniffing dog. He's absolutely adorable. There's a cult around him, essentially. And he is a bomb-sniffing dog. He is mainly used now. He's found over 2,000 different pieces of unexploded ordnance in the areas north, in the northern parts of Ukraine. Really came to fame immediately after the Russians withdrew from these areas. But he is very popular amongst children, and he's used to teach children, especially, the dangers of unexploded ordnance, something that is going to affect Ukraine for decades, if not centuries, because we can even see where long over a century after World War I is over, almost a century at this point after World War II, considering we're right up there in that 87 years at this point since the end of World War II. We're looking at those are still around. There's entire areas in Europe where you cannot go. Parts of the Ardennes forests. There's actually a steel harvest every single year. Farmers are plowing the fields around Verdun and in the areas of Flanders, Somme, and they are finding every time that they go through and they are tilling their fields before they sow them for the spring harvest. They're literally bringing up unexploded ordnance to the point that they pile them on the side of the road like rocks, and then EOD teams come by and pick them up every single year. They just drive down all these country roads and pick up hand grenades and stuff. But yes, Patron is adorable, and this is an issue that will affect Ukraine for a very long time. So having this kind of a connection for children is extremely important. Well, Patron now has his own... Riley says, join the cult of Patron. We have cookies. Patron now also has his own cartoon show. His first episode of the cartoon show has officially aired. It's called Patron the Dog, The Destroyed Bridge. And it's a cartoon series made in Ukraine that is featuring Patron the Dog. It was posted on the website. But if you're interested in watching it, I watched some of it. It's definitely geared towards children. Please keep that in mind. But it is available also in English and Polish subtitles, as well as if you do speak Ukrainian. So it is there. It has a whole host of characters. It's kind of a fun watch, but it is very much geared towards younger children, which is definitely the point. It's teaching young children the dangers of unexploded ordnance, and so it's pretty awesome to see that. And we also have the link added here if you guys want to go and check it out. But pretty awesome to see that the work does continue. We haven't really seen a lot of Patron out of the last couple of weeks, so it's good to see that there is still some stuff going on there. But with that, we actually move into the war itself, and we move into the meat and potatoes of the war almost immediately as we go here into the Donbass, and we actually start off in the Luhansk Oblast, where there's been several different developments. And we jump over here, and what we're seeing is reported partisan activity. Now, this is very hard to confirm, and we do know that there are partisans throughout different regions of Ukraine that are currently under occupation. Now, there is an immense partisan movement inside of the Kherson Oblast, and we suspect that there are pretty large ones inside of areas of Luhansk, as well as Donetsk and Zaporizhia too. And what we end up seeing here is reportedly, this is partisan activity targeting railroads here around the Luhansk Oblast, which is extremely vital. Targeting railroads, the Russian forces mainly are going through and they are using the rail lines to move large amounts of troops, equipment, ammunition, supplies. That is their primary way of resupply. And by striking these targets, by partisans hitting and damaging and destroying these rail lines, it can, of course, if it's not caught, if patrols don't catch the damage in time, these trains are going to pass over. They're going to derail, cause significant amounts of casualties, immense amount of destruction, and you also, of course, lose the armored train itself, but also all the equipment, a lot of the equipment with it. We've seen this happen in other places, including by partisan movements inside of Russia itself, especially in the Bryansk Oblast. But here we're kind of seeing some around the Luhansk Oblast. And this could be for any area in the Luhansk. There was nothing defined, but we do know that the vast majority of Russian forces right now are focused around the city of Svatove, which is where Ukrainian forces are trying to push. This is a major hardpoint in the Russian defensive line, and it is supplied by rail as well as Kreminna, which is up here. Kreminna was actually the day one objective seized by Russian forces at the very beginning of the Donbass campaign. And so by cutting those off, by cutting off the rail supplies here, it would greatly diminish their capability of defending these two cities from the Ukrainian offensive. So take a look here. It appears that they're making homemade explosives with timers.
Железная дорога. Время пошло. За своды Луганска.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot to go on. But partisan activity is partisan activity. Most of the time with partisan activity, the way that we are able to identify it is actually from Russian sources, less so than Ukrainian. You can identify them because by the Russian news media, specifically RT, which also owns RIA Novosti, but RIA Novosti as well. Basically, any of the Russian state-run news networks, they will define it as terrorist attacks inside of occupied areas of Ukraine. So those will be partisan activities. We've noticed specifically what they're targeting is definitely something that we've also heard reported from partisan activity when it comes to looking at it from the Ukrainian side. So we can't verify partisan attacks that way. There's also a large explosion out of Ludygin, which is down here towards the city of Luhansk itself. It is not a... it's not known if this is a partisan attack, if this is a Ukrainian strike, but it's kind of pointing to just a failure at this point. This is kind of what we're getting out of it is a failure on the part of a gas line in this area. There was a large explosion just outside the occupied city, and it has left a large majority. We've heard upwards of numbers of 11,000 people currently no longer have a gas supply to their homes. Once again, we don't know. This appears to be the lack of maintenance due to the war on these gas lines. The lack of upkeep may have caused a failure. We've seen similar failures in places such as just outside St. Petersburg in Russia and elsewhere in the Russian territories over the last few weeks. Once again, not a lot to go on, but definitely something that we have been able to kind of pinpoint. We do believe that at this point that is a failure of a gas line there. Of course, you can see my lovely co-host Inky behind me on the cat tree. I apologize if there is a lot of loud noise, as I have talked about before. If you may be returning from to the channel after a little bit, we do have... there is a lot of... we have a lot of animals. We have a dog and 2 cats. So, and all of their toys happen to be in this one room. So, it makes for a fun time. Now, I just saw Delta Aviation 23 asking, what is the situation in Soledar? And that is actually our next stop. As of the last 48 hours, Ukrainian forces were actually pushed back by the Wagner Group and Russian troops. It's clear back to the city center around the salt mine. This is located right here. This is where the most intense of the fighting has been taking place. This is the city center of Soledar, and there has been some back and forth. Reports right now are indicating that Ukraine over last night conducted a counterattack into the salt mine area. Reportedly, it is now in what is considered to be contested territory. So there is a swath of land right now that is not considered to be either sides, and it's currently kind of in the middle, but it's kind of changing sides rather regularly, including the salt mine itself. There has been immense amount of casualties on both sides. It's been an extremely bloody battle over the last 72 hours, especially where the situation has kind of degraded for both sides. And it seems that for the most part, both sides are stalled once again in kind of this deadlock fighting. And it's very close quarters urban fighting, one of the deadliest types of fighting you can do. And Delta Aviation said I posted a video in Discord that just came from Soldier, and I said yes, that is true. Actually, this last video that we have is actually coming from Delta Aviation, who actually posted that in our Discord. We actually get quite a lot of stuff from our individuals on the Discord. It points us in a lot of really good directions, a lot of good leads. It's a pretty awesome community to be part of. But this is coming from Solidar. In this video, it has copyright music. I apologize, but you can see just the immense amount of destruction in and around this area. It's very much small units that are conducting operations in this area as part of a bigger picture. This type of terrain really requires for success in this kind of terrain. It requires very good initiative and very close coordination between small units of troops. So it's quite an extensive amount of damage, though, as a result. So but we do see, if you notice, there's a lot of very small units, usually a squad or less of troops that are maneuvering or talking or showing kind of what's going on. It's very much very small units of forces embattled in this area. One team versus, literally a team of troops. So a team of 4 or 5 guys versus 4 or 5 guys assaulting their position or whatever. So it's a lot of small fighting, and that's making up a bigger picture. This is the video that's coming from Delta Aviation 23. This is the one that was posted on the Discord.
Солидар. Наш флажок.
And you can see that's the Ukrainian flag waving at the top there. So we can tell this is somewhere in vicinity of, once again, the salt mine, which is this general area here. So it is still, I would say, considered contested territory, despite the what appears to be having been a successful counterattack. But obviously, originally we had Russian forces push back clearer down to here. Once again, questionable accuracy on that, where you try to maintain accuracy within a couple miles as best we can, but the evidence didn't show any further push into Solidar. That changed significantly as of yesterday's stream, when we now have them pretty much in dead center of the city. Jumping down here into Bakhmut, the battle for Bakhmut does continue. And so both sides are sustaining pretty heavy losses. Since we started the stream, we have been reporting on the Battle of Bakhmut for 218 days. The Battle of Bakhmut, by our records, I went back through and found it when that had changed. The battle for Bakhmut started around June the 4th. So that is about when the battle for Bakhmut actually began. Until then, it was troops that had pushed and we're pushing around the Soledar area, coming from the Popasna pocket. So the true battle for Soledar and Bakhmutsky in this region right here didn't start until about 218 days ago on June the 4th. And so pretty over that time, 218 days of fighting a single battle is almost incomprehensible. That is an extremely long engagement, a single battle lasting 218 days. I'm sure you could probably break that down into a bunch of smaller, shorter phases of the battle, but it is for the single city. It is held. It continues to hold. Ukrainian forces right now are attempting to expand their defensive perimeter around the city of Bakhmut, and it is coming at very high casualties. Both sides have sustained casualties numbering in the thousands, if not tens of thousands, in this area alone. It lasts about 23.1 miles from coming from the north in Belhorivka down to Zaitsev, which is down there in the south along the southern flank. Soledar mostly comprising the hard point there in the northern flank, with Optine so comprising of the southern. And we see pretty high price being paid for by both sides, the Russians especially, but the fighting does continue pretty fiercely as that kind of renewed offensive continues here.
Бежать, бежать, бежать! Сука!
Ебать! Живы, здоровы!
Ты снял?
Брат,
Да
пиздец!
ну нахуй, ты что, ебанулся?
О, блядь! Тачка в
Блядь,
небе,
надо
нахуй.
прыгать.
Тачка в небе.
Да. Надо звідси.
That, it was a close call. So these are photos of civilians. So these are civilians, we believe, in the area that declared the front lines. This appears to be in vicinity of Bakhmut from other photos that we have seen of the surrounding region. So much like in the Battle of Mariupol and immediately following the Battle of Mariupol, there are no gas supplies, there's no water, there's no sanitation, there's no nothing. And every building is either very severely damaged or has been just completely destroyed. So civilians, there's hundreds of civilians that are still living in Bakhmut. Hundreds of them. And they have nothing. It's gone. And so what they're doing is they're having to do everything they can to survive. And what we're seeing here is obviously they're collecting water from puddles, gathered pooled water that they're getting from puddles. When we've also seen this and reported on this in places like Mariupol and the surrounding area after the Battle of Mariupol was finished. I mean, collecting it straight out of shell craters. And first responders are actually still working as well in this area. We do have 18 plus on this, and we've talked about it extensively, and that is the number of casualties and the World War I-esque style of attacks here. It's not a whole lot we can show because usually it gets extremely graphic very quickly. But these photos coming from Ilya Ponomarenko and also from a Telegram channel called Cargo 200 actually comes from Bakhmut. This is a top-down photographs of fields on the outskirts of Bakhmut where Russian forces were conducting wave-style attacks. And it's a sea of bodies is what it's turned into. The wave-style attacks, very reminiscent of World War I, going over the top of the trenches and running straight into machine gun positions. The Russians are doing the exact same thing here, and it has the exact same consequences it did well over 100 years ago. We have our daily Donetsk update coming from Pavel Krylenko, the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. He said, quote, on January 6th, number of victims of Russian army in Donetsk Oblast increased by 2 killed, 7 injured. And that was released at 8 a.m. local time this morning in regards to everything that happened yesterday. Did you get this from his graphic? He releases this in English and in Ukrainian every single day. But you see the injured come from Khodakove, Predichin, and Bakhmut, as well as someone having been killed in Bakhmut, as well as Krasnohora. Fortunately, quite a lot of people being injured and killed. Since the start of the Russian Federation's invasion on February the 24th, 1,292 Ukrainian civilians have been killed, as well as 2,823 having been injured. This does not include places such as Mariupol, Volnovakha, Donetsk, or any of the number of other settlements that are currently under Russian occupation. JL says Russians are double tapping attack responders, just like firefighters or medics. That is true. So that is actually a Russian tactic, specifically a Russian tactic of the general that is in charge of the army in Ukraine right now. So he's also known as the Butcher of Syria. He oversaw Russian aerospace forces as well as the Russian Operational Command South. He was in charge of the bombing campaigns for Aleppo, Idlib, and many other settlements from Syria. If you've ever seen photos of Syria, or if you know about Syria, the Russians came in, backed the Assad regime, and began to double tap people and conduct very indiscriminate bombardment campaigns. Really a precursor to what we see now. We saw this in Syria years ago. We saw it was happening when I was there. A very unfortunate consequence of well, that's just, we got to see the consequences of it. Let's just put it that way. The Russians, their tactic is they use cluster munitions, sarin gas, which is a nerve agent. They use all sorts of stuff, barrel bombs, delay bombs, parachute bombs, and they drop them indiscriminately over these cities, very highly populated cities, very dense populations in these places, lots and lots of people in a very small area. And they completely just level the building. I mean, they flatten that building and they cluster munition the whole streets and neighborhoods. Causes an immense amount of civilian casualties. Well, there's a group called the White Helmets. The Assad regime has declared them terrorists, saying that they work for the rebel side. They are very much not. They refuse to pick up weapons. They have had bad eggs, but they refuse to pick up weapons. They help everybody. They do not sway one side or the other of the conflict. They were known. The Russians would fire the BM-21 Grad onto a neighborhood of the city, would level that area. The White Helmets would come out, and they would actually assist the civilian casualties. And that's when the next salvo from the BM-21 Grads would come in, and it would kill and injure the only first responders in the area. And it would make it so that way it lowered the chances of survival. Literally, it's an extermination technique. And that is what we see here happening in Ukraine as well. We've aired videos of it. It happened in Kharkiv when it was within range of Russian artillery. Actual artillery. We actually had videos of when that happens that we've aired here on the channel. So we do know they are indiscriminate in their attacks. They are striking hospitals. They are striking fire stations. A fire station in Kherson got hit yesterday. It killed a firefighter and injured another 4. It is something that they do actually go after. They actually target it. And it is a war crime to do so. we jump down here. Marinka still holds. We have some videos coming out of the Marinka area. Marinka lies here along the southern flank of the occupied city of Donetsk, which serves as it's the regional capital of the Donetsk region. And it's been under occupation since before the invasion. It was taken back by Russian mercenaries and backed rebels. And what we see is, despite constant attacks, it still holds to this day. In fact, just last night, we aired where there was incendiary usage on Marinka. Quite extensive incendiary munitions usage on Marinka. But regardless, the small Ukrainian garrison here still holds against the Russians. They are still applying pressure onto that southern flank of the city of Donetsk itself, which once again serves as it's a major political administrative head for the Russians, but it's also a military headquarters, communications, and logistical hub, as well as staging area for Russian forces.
Тоже вроде бы как и снег идет, вроде бы как и не идет. Киллеры под подъездом валяются, нахуй. Хуй на них вообще, да? Тоже вроде бы как и
залишилась від села. Ось так кацапські гнуси руйнують наші села.
And Marinka has been absolutely just obliterated as a city. Coming back to this, back up, kind of moving northwest of Marinka. This is over near Ostrovsky. There's no such thing as friendly fire, and that is a very, very true saying. We call it a blue-on-blue incident. A blue-on-blue is when two friendlies are shooting at each other, but it's no longer. It's friendly fire, but it's not friendly if it's friendly fire. And so there's a reported blue-on-blue incident here where reportedly Ukrainian air defense forces had shot down a friendly Ukrainian MiG-29, which crashed around Ostrovsky. We do actually have the photograph of that MiG-29. So we do know that has happened. And so it's good to emphasize that this happens. Blue on blue happens all the time. And it's a sad fact. It's very much hard. It's something that you always try to avoid. But it was kind of it was likely it was going to happen. It was a matter of when. So definitely not a moment of... Definitely not a good moment, but definitely kind of a sobering one. Both sides are using similar equipment. Both sides have limitations in their capabilities. Both sides are under immense duress, and sometimes bad things happen, especially in a very confusing situation like that. So unfortunately that has happened, and it's definitely going to be felt there in the Ukrainian Air Force there as they lose yet another jet aircraft. That is actually everything inside of the country of Ukraine for tonight. There's a ton of other stuff outside of Ukraine, of course. And we actually start off here in Russia. Specifically, this is over here. This is a very small little village here. This is specifically in the Novosibirsk Oblast, where we have it geolocated. That the Russian forces are pushing quite literally whatever they can. And so they are pushing anything that they can to the front there in Ukraine. A lot of logistical equipment, because they always need more logistical capability. The Russians are very poor when it comes to capability in their logistics. but also, of course, military equipment such as tanks and actual fighting equipment. This is because they're taking immense losses. I mean, crippling material and equipment losses there on the front lines. These Russian units quite literally are to the point where they are being annihilated and new regiments are just being sent in their stead instead of replacing losses there for them. And it's very much to the point that Russian forces are so deteriorated they have stopped deploying as a battalion tactical groups and now are only deploying as mechanized and motorized infantry regiments. We can see some of that here. They're pulling everything out of their stockpiles, no matter how decrepit. Take a look here. There's a lot of logistical vehicles and specialist recovery and repair vehicles. So these are on the railroad there. There's some MTLBs passing by, fuel trucks, command trucks, repair vehicles. These are T-72s. Very, very poor condition T-72s. Russia inflates its numbers quite significantly. The Russian army capability, they talk about, the Russians have the most tanks of any country in the world. Yes, the vast majority of them are sitting in open fields in storage. So there are immense amounts of disrepair, and they have to be brought out of these fields, and sometimes they don't even get repairs. They don't even get servicing before they are sent to the front lines. Sometimes they actually get to Ukraine, and they're actually completely worthless as their gun breeches are jammed from the rust and deterioration. And sometimes they actually go through a cycle, a quick cycle, but where they're retrofitted sometimes with parts from other tanks. We've seen T-72s having T-80 armor skirts. Of course, the T-Series tanks are very interchangeable. They have a lot of similar parts, very small augmentations between the different designs everywhere, very small changes between a T-72 and a T-80 and a T-80 and a T-90. But right here, these are T-72s. I was able to identify them by the road wheel design, the 6 road wheels and their pattern there. The turret's actually facing to the rear of the tank on this. It is not facing the forward end of the tank. That is how they normally store them on a rail car. But you can see the deterioration. I mean, the entire back half of the armor plating on the turret here is completely rusted. Okay, you can see the rust forming. These are on the road wheels. You can see it's just not in a good state. The barrel has rusted, and that's a lot of equipment that we're seeing being pulled out of storage for the Russians at this point. Whoops, I am muted. I apologize. Delta Aviation asked, did you hear that Germany will send Patriot battery? Yes, I did. We actually reported on that yesterday. Germany will also send some mortars. And when it comes to the... he also asked that Ukraine lost yesterday an Su-25. Or he also says that Ukraine also lost an Su-25. And I said, yes, that is possible, but we've also heard claimed yesterday that Ukraine shot down a Russian Su-25. So if there's no photographic evidence to say for certain. So that is one of the reasons why we can't really say for certain. We have to have some kind of photographic evidence to back many of these claims, just because of the similarities, especially between the equipment. that is being used, but also it is an information war too. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to take everything being said by both sides with some kind of doubt and uncertainty with it, as is a very fluid situation that is already kind of chaotic to keep track of, let alone the information war of either trying to undercut or trying to build support for either your side or undercut the enemy. Poland here, as we move on, is actually part of the Free the Leopards movement. Poland maintains a number of Leopards. It is actually not their entire tank force. The Leopards actually only make up most of their modernized tank force here in Poland. But they also have a lot of tanks that they have just bought from South Korea. And so momentum is currently building thanks to Poland to send Leopard main battle tanks to Ukraine after Poland joined Finland in saying it stands ready to supply the heavy weapons in the fight against Russia. Up until now, Kiev's Western allies have rejected appeals for tanks, fearing they could escalate the war. On Saturday, Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, I'm so sorry, JL, that I butchered that, said he could transfer Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine if a large Leopard coalition formed. The main country holding them back is Germany. Germany is the producer of the Leopard. They produced the Leopard 1 and later the Leopard 2. The Leopard 2 is one of the most modern main battle tanks in arsenal with NATO right now. It's also one of the most numerous, having been supported by having support in Finland and also in Poland. Poland actually still maintained an armor fleet and maintains an armored fleet of the T-series vehicles that they had under the Soviet Union. Part of Germany's project was to help Poland modernize, being the eastern flank of the NATO alliance, by modernizing their tanks by providing them surplus Leopard 2s. And we can see here coming from a Visegrad 24. So, very good to see. I would love to see the Leopard 2 being freed. A lot of people, like I said, the main problem is Germany. Anything that, when it comes to defense spending, and defense, giving away things, it's, even if components are made up of certain, from certain countries, then those countries can deny those components to be sold or given to another country as well. So, for instance, there was an issue, one of the reasons Imran Khan's talk about not liking the United States before he was removed from power in Pakistan, was that the United States, or they had a deal, I think, with Turkey to get helicopters from Turkey, but the engines of the helicopters were American, and the United States refused the deal and would not allow Turkey to provide the helicopters to Pakistan because they did not want their engines to go to Pakistan. Same thing with Germany. Poland has the Leopard 2, but ultimately it's a German weapon system. Germany gave or sold these to Poland. And Poland has to have Germany's consent to provide those to Ukraine. Same thing with Finland. Anybody that's bought the Leopard 2, anyone that has Leopard 1s or Leopard 2s in their system. So that means that it has to go through Germany, which is really what's holding it back. Virgilio Stankiu says Germany already lost this war. I don't know about that. That's yeah. I don't think so. As we move on here and up into Birmingham, the Birmingham area, I should say, this is going to take place across the United Kingdom on the 23rd. Virgilio Stinky says, economically, Ukraine is destroyed. That is his reason why they have lost the war. Not really. Ukraine's economy is actually pretty strong. Their economy is mostly focused on the war effort right now. which I don't know if you noticed, but wars make economies fantastic in many ways. Germany got out of its one of the most horrendous economic depressions ever when Adolf Hitler took power, and it actually went to its defense spending, and it built up its military without anybody really, despite it went outside of its treaty obligations, and that actually pulled it out economically. But you usually don't build an army if you're not going to be using it, which of course Nazi Germany ended up doing. Same thing, the United States, Great Depression and World War II comes along, and by 1943, the United States, 95% of everything built in the United States is going towards the war effort. It completely turned the United States from being an economic depression into an economic boom, and that lasted clear up until now. I mean, we never went into really another depression. We went into a small recession back in 2008 economically, but that was due to completely different circumstances of the housing crisis. When the economic crisis will install in Europe, there will be no more help to Ukraine. Explain what domains still work in Ukraine. Well, actually, the domains that still work in Ukraine is primarily clothing. Lots of clothing, lots of basic goods. So ceramics are still operating inside of Ukraine. A lot of textile is still being brought out of Ukraine. Of course, your agricultural capacity is still being out of Ukraine. They're coming out of Ukraine. In fact, if we take a look here, let's see, UN Grain Corridor, Black Sea Initiative vessel movements. We can see that under the grain corridor from the several different ports, including Chernomorsk, Privdeni, and Odessa, so far 16,844,761 metric tons of cargo, agricultural cargo, has actually left from Ukrainian ports, and that is since the signing of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is overseen by the United Nations, meaning that economically, that is still, which is the primary industry of Ukraine, is still actually technically viable. So Ukraine's economy is doing pretty okay. Back to the news here. UK ambulance workers are going on strike on January the 23rd. British ambulance workers will go on strike January 23rd in an ongoing dispute over pay. The union said that over 2,600 ambulance workers in the West Midlands, Northwest, Northeast, and East Midlands, and Wales will take a strike action in late January. Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham said the ambulance workers have been left with no option and blamed the government for its failure to intervene to end the dispute. We jump down here and into the Middle East. We're coming out of Tel Aviv. Protests broke out against government policies there in Tel Aviv, here in Israel. Thousands of activists gathered in Tel Aviv to protest Justice Minister Yariv Levin's proposed judicial reforms on Saturday night, describing the plan as a dangerous coup d'etat. The anti-Netanyahu Black Flag movement said that the coup d'etat will encounter a nation of Israel determined to guard our democracy, and the reforms will fail. You see just the vast number of people here. Obviously, not very popular. If you want more on that, Haaretz.com does have more information on it. Showing up here and into Tehran, Iran's judge of death reportedly was assassinated. Now, this is not something we were able to confirm, but Al-Qassam Salavati is claimed to have been assassinated in his house in Tehran, Iran. The assassins reportedly drove up to Salatavi's house at 2200 or 10 p.m. local time, were able to enter his garage armed with a 9mm Colt pistol. Government officials have not yet made any announcements regarding his alleged death. His colleagues have said this is untrue, but he has not been publicly seen in over 48 hours, despite the ongoing situations with protesters there. Despite this, two of the individuals that we had named in last night's stream, both Mohammed Mehdi Karimi as well as Saeed Mohammed Hosseini, were found guilty of killing the security official. They managed to tell their relatives and human rights activists that they were subjected to electric shocks and threats of sexualized violence during their detentions and arrests, but they were both executed. And coming out of India, nearly 200 people were evacuated as homes started to develop cracks. Indian authorities have moved nearly 200 people from their homes in the homeland town of Joshimath, and after hundreds of buildings in the area, popular with the pilgrims and tourists, developed cracks due to shifting soil. For years, experts have warned that large-scale construction work, including hydropower projects in and around Joshimath, could lead to land subsidence, or the sinking or settling of the ground surface. In recent weeks, cracks have been reported in more than 600 houses in Joshimath, prompting local authorities to move 193 residents to safer locations, including hotels and guest houses.
ये आप लोग का घर है?
हाँ बेटा,
तो ये पूरा अभी टूट रहा है, दरारें आ रही हैं इसमें?
टूट रहा बेटा, ये सारा किचन में बैठ गया। ये तो बच्चों का वो है घर आगे, ये है मेरा।
And these are not small cracks either, as you can see. And in China, protests are ongoing against mass layoffs. Workers in Zibio Incorporated, including in the Dachau district of Zhongqing in China, protested against sudden layoffs issued by the pharmaceutical factory on today, or the 7th of January. Protests broke out as workers were not given prior notice before they were laid off on the evening of January the 6th. Zibio refused to hand out wages, and 80% of their 10,000 workers were reportedly laid off when the Chinese New Year is in 2 weeks. The workers gathered at the factory, overturned the machines, and burnt the products for fire and beat up the recruiter. Riot police attempted to control the situation, but workers threw many objects at them. Zibio has produced COVID-19 testing kits during the pandemic when testing mandates were in place. China has released the testing requirement in December 2022, which led to a decrease in testing demand.
这又用抗原盒子烧火了，哎呀，太冷了。
And so that is the situation currently ongoing there in China. Coming back into just off the coast of Africa, specifically on the northern coast of Tunisia, 5 migrants died and 10 are currently missing after a boat sank. At least 5 migrants died, another 10 were missing after a boat sank off the coast of Tunisia as they tried to cross the Mediterranean to Italy. The Coast Guard rescued 20 migrants who had been on an overcrowded boat which sank off Latau in the ShamRocks region on Friday. Yet another earthquake occurred, this time in Morocco, where a 5.3 magnitude earthquake ended up hitting the northern part of the country. Specifically, it jolted the province of Al Hoceima in the northern part of Morocco at 9:12 a.m., or also known as 3:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 8:12 a.m. UTC, early this morning. The epicenter of the tremor was initially determined to be at the town of Nakor, at a depth of 21 kilometers or 13 miles. So far, no casualties have been reported. In Mexico City, as we jump across the Atlantic, 2 trains ended up colliding in Mexico City subway. 2 metro trains collided on Saturday at the capital of Mexico City. Emergency services are currently on site. As a result of the train collision, so far 1 person has died and 22 others sustained injuries. Mexico City Secretary of Public Security Omar Garcia Harfuch is adding that 3 people remain trapped inside of the train carriages. There's some images coming from the train here. Coming from Newport News, Virginia, a 6-year-old child ended up shooting a teacher. A 6-year-old student shot and wounded a teacher at a school in Virginia during an altercation inside the 1st grade classroom Friday. No students were injured in the shooting, but the teacher suffered life-threatening injuries. Her condition has improved somewhat by late afternoon. It's coming from Rich Neck Elementary School there in Newport News. You want some more information? Pilot Online has more. And from Washington, D.C., the fight for Speaker of the House has ended. On the 15th vote, which started while we were on stream last night and did not end until after we had ended for the night, the Republican from California, Kevin McCarthy, was elected Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives early on Saturday, after making extensive concessions to right-wing hardliners. McCarthy's victory in the 15th ballot ended the deepest congressional dysfunction in over 160 years. He won at last on a margin of 216 to 212. More information coming from Reuters, who has a full report on that for you guys if you are interested. That's it for the hard-hitting news of the night, but that doesn't mean that's the end of the news entirely. We try to end every single night on a good or an interesting note, something to kind of lighten the mood, because a lot of this stuff is kind of depressing, kind of hard-hitting stuff. So we actually can start off here, coming from Goddard, Maryland, where we see that a once in a 50,000 year comet may be visible to the naked eye. A newly discovered comet could be visible to the naked eye as it shoots past Earth and the sun in the coming weeks for the first time in 50,000 years. The comet, called C2022E3 or ZTF, will come closest to the sun on January the 12th and pass nearest to Earth on February the 1st. It'll be easy to spot with a good pair of binoculars and likely even with the naked eye, provided the sky is not too illuminated by city lights or the moon. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled between January 12th and February the 1st. And we jump down here and into Ecuador, where the a very big, actually, snake was found. A new species, in fact. The new dwarf boa constrictor was found in the Ecuadorian Amazon. Scientists have discovered a new species of dwarf boa in the Ecuadorian Amazon and named it after an indigenous activist. Up to 20 centimeters or 7.8 inches long, and with skin coloring similar to those of the boa constrictor, the snake was named Topodophis coccogoa. Two specimens were found in the Coloso Chalupas National Reserve and in the private Sumac Kawase Park. The team's findings were published on the European Journal of Taxidermy. Look at the little snake. Look at the little boa constrictor. You can have a hawk nose, you cannot have a boa constrictor. So, pretty cool. Cool little snake there. But that is actually it for the news around the world. Quite a lot of stuff happening over the past 24 hours. Quite a lot for sure. So I hope that you guys found that this is informative. Quite a lot of stuff happening, and we hope that you guys will be able to help us support, help to support our endeavor in trying to get back to these situations. So please be sure to check out the video description below and check out all of the wonderful organizations that we have down there, many of which were submitted by you guys as the viewers. And 70% or more of the donations that these organizations receive go directly to their programs. 30% or less, the emphasis on the or less, go to things like salaries and administration's costs. So we hope to do a lot of good with this. We hope at one point to actually be able to put a fundraiser on every single stream. We're never doing super chats. We're never pushing merchandising. We're never doing anything like that. We're never monetizing this for personal gain. 100% of everything we do here at TNN will always be for charity. So be sure to check out the video description. And if you can't give a lot to those organizations, give a little. Can't give anything at all? That's okay too. Help us grow our impact here at TNN. Help us grow what we can do here. And so that way we can help even more people from around the world. And if you have more organizations, please get in touch with a staff member, either from our website via email or even easier on our Discord. You can send us a private message with an organization's link and a short description to let us know what they do, and we'll get that vetting process started and hopefully added to the stream as well. In the meantime, I hope that you guys are safe, that your friends and your family are safe, and if not, I hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. And we hope to see you back once again on Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central, for a 48 hours of news and review covering topics such as the war in Ukraine and all of the other major hard-hitting news stories from around the world. My name is Paul from the New News. Be sure to give a thanks to the entire team who puts this together, and I hope to see you back again there on Monday. Have a good one.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до волноваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас слать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шлепуємо. То для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до волноваги, і чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волноваги чутно кличі, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home.